Welcome to Healing Not Healed, where we will talk about all things mental health and holistic wellness in a very transparent and culturally competent space. Okay, for today, I wanted to talk about trauma reenactment because I blurted it out in the last video and I feel like I must follow up and give context of what that means. And it's interestingly enough, I did a blog entry on that a long time ago because it is something that I think, as we know, a lot of us on social media are learning a lot of new terms, a lot of new psychological terms, and are misusing a lot of those terms. And even myself, I think even some of us slip up and say things out of context, like, oh, I'm so antisocial, when you think that means you don't like to be around people, but that's actually a whole diagnostic criteria. And so to me, it's colorful language, and it's just simple correction. It's not really like people are using the words wrong and I can't stand when it's just like a matter of just simply gently correcting people when they're wrong. And so one of those terms are trauma bonding. A lot of people have utilized the words trauma bonding in reference to feeling that they're having a negative, toxic connection with someone based on similar trauma or lived experience with trauma together. And that is not what trauma bonding is. And so I think more education and more conversations are, and more correction is happening on the internet in regards to what a lot of these psych terms are, and people are coming to the realization that trauma bonding is trauma bonding with your predator, the person inflicting the trauma. I wanted to talk about trauma reenactment because I think that is the concept that a lot of people are trying to get a better understanding of, but haven't heard the term. And so they might be misusing the language just purely out of lack of knowledge, which is okay. We can simply correct. Myself included. I have misused trauma bonding. The literal meaning of the words become complex versus what the definition and what the research has defined it as. So yes, like antisocial just sounds like, oh, I don't like being social, right? When it's like, no, it's not literal. And I think that's the part where we have to give people grace and like understand, myself included, that just gently correct people, that you hear words and you use context clues to come up to define what the word means. And sometimes you may be wrong. It just is what it is. So trauma reenactment, also known as repetition compulsion. It is the unconscious tendency to repeat behaviors, patterns, or situations that mirror past traumas. This can manifest symbolically, say nightmares, other memories, flashbacks, things like that, or literally by repeating emotional and physical painful experiences. Understanding trauma reenactment is crucial for recognizing and addressing patterns that can perpetuate negative past traumas. Understanding trauma reenactment is very important in recognizing and addressing patterns that can perpetuate the negative effects of past trauma. So what does that look like? A lot of the times it's unconscious. A lot of the times we don't recognize or realize that we are contributing to a pattern until afterwards. We don't necessarily have the foresight to know initially, right? And so unconscious means that you don't recognize it, you don't realize it. Typically, we are creatures of habit. We seek familiarity. We seek patterns ourselves. And so the underlying drive is to seek the comfort or control by recreating a situation. And sometimes our subconscious feels the need to try to correct certain behaviors that we feel our past selves had not reconciled. This can involve repeating unhealthy relationship patterns, engaging in risky behaviors, seeking situations that seem familiar or trigger that emotion or experience that you experienced in your trauma. So what are some examples of this? repeatedly choosing partners that exhibit similar abusive behaviors to your childhood. I think that's probably the most common form of that. We tend to seek intimacy and romantic partners that either relate to our mother or father figures, not in an ancestral way, but perhaps, you know, nurturing. You probably want a nurturing woman in your life. If you had a dominant protective male figure, you might look for a dominant protective male figure. Or we tend to do the opposite. You either want something similar or you do the complete opposite, trying to be rebellious. And that's typically more of the conscious people, the people that are more consciously knowing behaviors of their pattern, behaviors or patterns of their parents that they just absolutely did not like. Another example is engaging in self-destructive behaviors as a way to cope with hyperarousal or other trauma-related symptoms. And what that means is, you know, when we experience trauma, we have a increased level of cortisol and adrenaline and hormones that kind of put us on edge, and make us feel this very emotional high. And so sometimes romantic relationships that tend to be toxic, that have those waves of up and down, give us that same sense of arousal. And it's almost like an addictive quality or addictive behavior for our brains to seek out that hormone of fight or flight. And that's how some people get caught up in those toxic cycles. Someone who isn't doing some of those things that they're used to experiencing throughout their life with other relationships and their parents and things like that, they might find boring or don't have butterflies or don't feel as excited or intrigued or just not fully invested because they're not getting that same response. But again, this is very subconscious. And it's because you're used to your body being in hyperarousal. A lot of people know, and a lot of people have started reading the Body Keeps Score. As you know, trauma can cause a lot of changes in our brain function, even shrinking, memory, concentration, of course, mood. And we reenact our trauma just trying to seek relief in a sense of we feel like we're in control even when we're not because it's a familiar situation. I hear a lot of people not leave situations out of fear of the unknown, not necessarily out of an emotional attachment with this person, but because they feel comfort in that relationship. They feel familiarity in that relationship. They know what to expect. Even when doing the highs and lows, they already expect some of those lows, despite desiring a different feeling or desiring a different type of relationship. I'll talk about the types of repetition compulsion because I think we talked about them vaguely, but one is repeating behaviors. And so that is people finding themselves repeating the same certain type of routine or same type of behavior, even if it's not something they enjoy. They're just doing it by habit. They're just doing it as a maladaptive way of coping because that's the way they're used to behaving. Repeating situations. Repeatedly placing yourself in situations that even you find uncomfortable or you would prefer to avoid. Repeating self-defeating actions, self-sabotage, negative self-talk, avoidance, procrastination. Repeating relationship cycles, seeking out the same type of partnership that, again, show you the same negative behaviors that you had in your past relationships or past childhood experiences. And then there are those that reenact the trauma. They physically go through the process of directly repeating and re-experiencing the trauma. There's no single cause for repetition compulsion. It just is a very complex phenomenon in our psyche. It's an unconscious pattern for a lot of people. And as it becomes conscious, you try to develop healthier habits, healthier boundaries, healthier communication in order to move forward. Another cause could be attachment issues. Again, a lot of childhood adversive experiences, whether you're an anxious attachment or avoidant attachment. People who have attachment problems due to early neglect or childhood trauma may find themselves repeatedly seeking out unhealthy relationships in their adulthood, emotional dysregulation. Repetition compulsion may occur when people are poorly regulated. They may struggle to tolerate difficult emotions and criticism, which may lead them to respond disproportionately to the event. Personality. Sometimes our personality traits, such as impulsivity or perfectionism, may make a person more likely to have repetition compulsion. And sometimes it's a coping mechanism. Some people feel like this type of behavior is less stressful in a sense of they have more sense of control. They feel like, at least with the negative experience, they know what to expect. So what do you do if you notice these things? Ask for help, right? I think these are things that you can process through when you recognize and see yourself engaging in these behaviors. And I don't think it all happens at once. Sometimes you experience some major life events that make you realize, like, I don't want to do this shit anymore, right? And it's okay. And so I just encourage you to seek support, seek help, speak to a professional in order to process these emotions. And here's the thing, right? Trauma is a very subjective experience. We can't tell people how they feel in their experience. However, once you recognize there is aspects of your behavior that you do not desire, and you recognize that it is a coping strategy that you developed over time due to past experiences, it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to say, I don't want to behave in that way anymore, that I don't want to react in that way anymore. And so whether it's defined as trauma, or you feel like you just had just a really bad negative experience, maybe you got trust issues, or maybe you're guarded, maybe you shut down, maybe you stonewall, whatever the case is, we don't necessarily have to call it trauma. But if it's a repetitive behavior that you would like to break, definitely seek support, definitely seek assistance, and it's something that you can address and process. So again, I appreciate you being here with me today, Healing Fam. Make sure that you like, share, subscribe. Make sure you follow me on Instagram. I have Sound Healing Sundays on Sunday on Live Instagram, trying to bring it to YouTube. If I get to 50 subscribers, then I will go ahead and start doing live on YouTube. And make sure to follow me on Patreon. I plan on doing some special events, special workshop, special group things for those people that join my Patreon. Again, I have an episode air every Thursday right here. Thank you, Healing Fam.